Hey everybody here on YouTube. This is the first lesson as a preview of my AI for Software Engineers course. I'll have a link for the full course down in the description below. Really excited for this material. Let's get into it. Welcome to your first lesson on AI for Software Engineers. This video is going to lay the foundation, give you a complete overview of the AI landscape, and talk about the things we're going to cover in this course. So this course will have concept videos that we do up on the chalkboard, but it's going to be paired with a substantial amount of on-screen, hands-on material as well. So once we get the foundational theory out of the way, it'll be a lot easier to apply that to hands-on examples. So make sure you pay attention to these lessons. So that's the general approach I like to take, talk about the concepts, get an overview, and then go and apply that to something. This video, however, will be a little bit different because this is going to basically explain the overview for the entire course. This is basically, if you're brand new to AI, you have no idea anything, this video will get you up to speed so you can start benefiting from AI as a software engineer. Now, why did I include this for software engineers? This is something I just want to make clear from the very beginning. There's a lot of people getting into building apps who do not come from a software engineering background or really have no idea what they're doing when it comes to writing code. They're using AI entirely, trusting the AI to build everything for them. You may hear this as vibe coding, and this is not what the course is about. Now, you will understand all of those things and be able to do that, but you're going to have a much stronger background because we're coming at this from the perspective of a software engineer. So if AI gives you some output, you don't just ignore the inner details, but you actually pay attention to what the AI is giving you and have a transparent response so you can understand what the AI is giving you and how it came to that conclusion. If you have this approach with AI, you're going to be much more effective as a software engineer. Because there are certain scenarios where you want to do something like this, where the AI basically produces something for you. But if you don't have the underlying skills of a software engineer, you're going to be limited in what the AI is able to do for you. You might be able to get to a certain point, but the end result is going to be limited and you're going to have a harder time getting there. So really, what this course is for is to take regular software engineers or people interested in the actual code, teach them everything they need to know about AI, not just using AI tools to do things for them, but also integrating AI into their applications. So let's say, for example, you built a mobile app. This might be something that you built on your own and AI didn't build for you, but there might be some AI component bringing AI features into your app, and we want to know how to do this as well. So that's an entirely different thing than building apps using AI. So we're going to talk about both of those things. And really, there's three main things you should be comfortable with when it comes to AI as a software engineer. The first is to become familiar and comfortable with the AI tools that are out there, using these tools to do things for you, improve your efficiency, or help you produce a better output. The second major thing is prompt engineering, how you can adjust the way you use AI to get different responses or better responses for what you're trying to achieve. The third thing is integrating with AI. So in this section, I will teach you how to install AI into your brain so that you become AI. No, I'm playing. This is all about using AI in your apps. So if you want to be an AI developer, being able to build AI features and make apps use external APIs or AI tools, that's what this section is about. Now, each one of these is a vast topic. So we could talk about each one of these for days. But what we're going to do is we're going to give an intermediate overview of each of these topics so that by the end you are an intermediate developer in all of these areas and you can proficiently use AI in all of its different capacities. So before we get into all of those things, you might be watching this thinking, do I even want to learn AI? What is AI even used for? So I want to answer this question in two ways. So the first, I want to talk about how AI is used generally in different industries. And then I want to share with you a few different things you can use AI for right now to benefit from AI. So these big industry uses of AI are very cool, but it's not something very tangible or usable for you at this moment. So that's why I want to give you some practical stuff you can do today. So let's talk about industries and how AI has affected them. And I'll keep this pretty quick so we're not, going through a whole history of AI and its use cases. But a big one is healthcare. So AI can be utilized to recognize patterns and identify potential issues, usually faster than humans. So for example, AI can be used to call out at high risk patients, and it can do this in a way that's either faster than a human being able to scan through a bunch of data or more correctly based off of historical data. Another great example would be to analyze some test results. So AI being used to take a look at X-rays or MRIs and identifying potentially bad areas in those scans. Now, this is going to lead us to a bunch of questions of should we trust the AI to do these things? And that's an entire topic we'll bring up throughout this course. But for now, just understand that AI does have these capabilities. Whether we trust that AI blindly, or we have a doctor confirm it, or we make the AI write the solution in such a way that it shows how it came to that conclusion. These are all different approaches and things we're going to talk about when it comes to trusting the output of AI. Because if you're not careful, you just trust the AI blindly, it can give you some bogus results. You've probably noticed this if you've used ChatGPT and you're asking it something, and it just gives you some answer as if it's 100% fact, but you know that it's incorrect or that it's just making stuff up on the spot. So those are all things we're going to talk about. Another big industry would be the legal industry. So I don't know if you've ever had legal documents where you're like, this is just too much information, I'm just going to sign it. You might do that for some low risk things like end user license agreements and things of that nature. But with the use of AI, you could scan documents. You can use it as a way to call out any potential high risk points in that document, call out any conflicting points, and help you decide if it's something you should sign or not sign. Additionally, AI could be used on the other side of this to write good legal documents. Now, this brings up the same question. Do we trust the AI blindly, or do we need a lawyer's involvement? All different approaches, and at this point in time, I would say utilize AI as an assistant for these things. But whether or not you trust the results blindly depends on the application or the use case, and any input you can give to make a better decision is going to help. So if you use AI to draft up some contract, maybe just have an attorney or lawyer confirm it instead of spending a lot of money to have the attorney write something from scratch. So we'll just add some in here. So X-rays for healthcare, scanning documents in legal. Now this one's huge in finance. You can have AI do fraud detection. That's a huge one. This is a realm where a human checking for potential fraud can be very challenging because it's usually not just a single transaction. You will check the behavior of the person and any previous actions that may have led up to that transaction. So for example, let's say you're using a debit card in a different country, but you also bought a plane ticket a couple of weeks ago. That's just a very simple example, but with AI, fraud detection can be done much more effectively and save probably billions of dollars. If a bank can integrate AI into their fraud detection systems and increase the effectiveness even just a couple of percentages, it can save a ton of money. So this is already being done, and as AI continues to grow, it's going to become even more integrated with finance. Next up would be farming. So AI being used to scan imagery of farms to check for potential pests or diseases that crops might be having, checking the amount of water they need, giving algorithms and procedures to take care of very large farms to make sure the crops survive and have the highest yield possible. And then lastly, education. Now there's a million other industries, but these are the ones I wanted to call out. Education is huge. That's coming from my perspective, teaching you guys online, but even more formal education like universities, having study companions, AI tools to help people learn, being able to challenge people's understanding or question them, the ability to read papers, evaluate whether the paper's unique, good, or if there's any kind of potential risk for plagiarism or other issues. These are all things that AI can assist with. Now, from this list, you may think that, wow, there's a lot of processing that happens here. And this does get into the realm of statistics and predictive analytics. But with the latest updates in AI, you don't really need to have that statistical background, because basically here's how it's split. We have people that use stats and build machine learning models, do all the advanced AI stuff, and they release AI tools such as LLMs or other things. And then we as developers and users can use those tools. So we usually don't have to get down to the level of creating our own models or using machine learning algorithms. So you don't have to have a stats background to benefit from this course. We're not going to get into any of that. If that's something you want, then yeah, go get that. But that's not what we're talking about here. The stuff we talk about will definitely benefit you if you go down that route, but we're a level up where we're not worrying about the algorithm level. We are worrying about the application of these algorithms. So if this is what you're looking for, then go down the route of statistics and machine learning models. But if you're a software engineer looking to integrate with AI, then you're in the right place. So let's now talk about applications of AI that you can use today. As you're learning this material, the first obvious one is to use AI as a learning companion. So you can use AI to increase learning speed. Now, I've talked about using AI tools to write code for you and things of this nature in some of my other programming videos, and I've cautioned people, don't use these AI tools as a way to jump to the conclusion without understanding the code that it writes. As a brand new beginner, you should learn all of the code so you can actually code, but you shouldn't completely throw AI out because it can actually help you get to that destination and show you the path that it took to get there. So I constantly use AI to bring me from point A to point B and explain the steps used to get there. So use it to actually increase your learning speed, not as a way to skip learning altogether. Another one is mock interviewing. You can do this text-based, so having AI ask you questions, you give the answers and get feedback, or you can do it with voice. Some of the AI tools will have a vocal version, so you can basically do text-to-speech in a more conversational way, and then have the record of the chat later on. So this can be great for things like behavioral interviews where you're not typing up some code. Now this is a big one. You can use AI to enforce code quality. So maybe you're writing the code, you're learning how to code, or you're using AI in certain scenarios to write code. But ultimately, you can have all of that code go through a scan from an AI tool to catch any potential bugs or security issues or things that should be changed before the code goes live. Next big one, which will save you a lot of time, is reducing documentation efforts. Because we're to the point where AI can basically explain any section of code, the use of extensive documentation, having a dedicated documentation site, becomes less important for small teams. Now, obviously, if you're building some public SDK or some library, you'll want to have documentation showing people how to use that, but you don't need to spend nearly as much time in the code documenting every single thing because one, you can have AI generate documentation that's consistent and predictable and actually probably better than something you would write. Or you can use AI to document on the fly as needed. So explain this function to me. Those are two approaches that might be useful in certain scenarios. Now, the next big one is translation. Now, I'm thinking of code here, but of course it could do it for languages as well. But say you have some code written in C++, you want to change that to Rust. You can use AI to help you through that transition process. This is an extremely beneficial one that AI can provide, and it's very easy to do. Next would be to summarize meetings, because either you're not paying attention or because you want to get any points that you need to do, basically action items from an hour-long meeting. This can also be beneficial for any kinds of sales calls or anything like that, where you want to identify where something may have went wrong, but you don't want to skim through hours and hours of video. So this can be really handy for businesses. This kind of goes back to the documentation, but a little bit different. So you can have trained chatbots on your organization and your code. So imagine now you want to understand how some system integrates with another system. You could just ask the trained chatbot because it has full understanding of the different libraries and how things work together. This goes very closely with documentation because this AI is now able to have a fuller picture rather than just some comment in an isolated code section. It could actually talk about how that means something for the bigger picture, allowing you to get a better understanding of the vast different services of a new job or new company. Now this one's pretty obvious, generating stuff, but specifically what I'm thinking here is say you want to build some app, but you're doing it solo or you have a really small team. You can utilize AI to generate stuff where you don't have a very strong opinion on the final result. So for example, you can use generative AI to build you a logo, a landing page, pricing models, license agreements and privacy statements, internal tools for reading data or processing payments, or any of these smaller things that don't have a public-facing visual. You can basically utilize AI to do all the other stuff so you can focus on the core product, the thing that actually makes money. So generating stuff, pretty vague, but very useful. Now, you might be familiar with LLMs, which generates text, but there's also visual generation, so photos and video, as well as documents and PDFs and all kinds of generation you can do with AI. So a big one here is cross-app automation. You may be familiar with automation. Maybe you write some Python scripts and you need to do something like take some Excel file or Google Sheets file, process that data in some way, make some emails to certain people, basically multi-steps in some pipeline. This can be done very effectively with cross-app automation. So you might have some cross-app automation tool already that is now integrating AI capabilities for things like summaries or drafting material, or you might go a little bit more native to the AI and use something like MCP. This is a standard for tools to interact with each other within the context of LLMs. We'll get into that a bit later. Last one on here I'm going to have is prototyping apps. Now you could potentially use AI to build entire apps. I actually know of people who have done that. Someone I knew was a meditation specialist, and they built a breathing focused app, and they built the entire thing having no idea how to code, all vibe coding, and they launched it and made good money with it. But I would say typically the use case that I'm going to suggest is prototyping apps. So getting the initial versions, because if you're going to get to larger scale apps, it's going to become more and more important to understand the underlying code and the way things work. But I'm not saying it's impossible to build full apps. Just understand when you should do something like that and when you should not. Building a simple iOS app, probably possible. Building a multi-billion-dollar media platform, probably a little bit more difficult. So there are certain scenarios where you can use like complete AI development for certain sections of a larger system. So if you have microservices, there might be certain ones that could be easily built with AI. And that's a more effective approach to build larger scale systems because you can have working components almost like little functions that work together to build a bigger picture. But we're kind of getting into the weeds right now, so let's not worry too much about it. Basically, you can use AI just to build apps for you, whether that's through prompting or through agents. And most likely it's going to be through agents. That's the talk right now. Basically using AI to do an entire thing for you from concept to completion. So we'll talk about agents, what you should know about them, and how to utilize them to increase your productivity. Cool, so we have a pretty good understanding now of how we can use AI, but let's talk about how do you actually get started. If you want to get to the end destination of being an AI expert, what's level 0? That's what we're going to talk about now. Some of this might be review if you've used AI before, but we're just going to make sure we get the foundation done. So let's talk about where many people get started, which is ChatGPT. Let's talk about what ChatGPT is and how that's different than some of the other tools out there. So if you're not familiar with ChatGPT, you'll want to go to that pretty much right now, because this is going to be the avenue which you start learning a lot of the different AI concepts. Now, ChatGPT is pretty similar in concept to some of the other tools out there, so this isn't something where it has to be ChatGPT, but the idea. So ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Llama, there are various other ones, I'm sure, but those are all within the same category of an LLM. So large language model, this is something that is specifically designed to generate text and allow interactive conversation with this tool. So this is all part of the GPT here. So most people don't know what this means. This stands for generative pre-trained trained. What does it stand for? How could you not know what that stands for, you stupid? Generative pre-trained transformer. And it's a specific type of LLM. So start to ask it questions. It'll keep a memory of that conversation so you can go back and forth with the AI. So it's a bit more engaged than just a search engine where you ask a question and it gives you a response independent of any previous searches. So the LLMs usually have a memory within that chat, and they may have a memory across multiple chats. So I might be talking to the LLM and I ask it a question, hey, can you teach me about C++? And it answers knowing that, hey, this guy creates content online. He might be looking for some structured material for teaching, and the answer is adapted to fit that memory more closely. Now, one cool thing is you can change the settings. So if you go into some of these tools, there will be a settings, and you can specify what information you want to give the LLM for any conversation. So here you can change the tone of the LLM or how it responds. For example, one thing I've noticed, I feel the responses are a little too supportive or friendly when generally I'm talking to an LLM because I'm trying to find things I've missed or things that are wrong and I want to get better. So I went into the settings and I said, hey, I want you to try to poke holes in my ideas and not be too agreeable. I also want you to get to the point with the answer, so don't write out huge messages. So those are some of the things that I did to customize the output. So ChatGPT was more effective for my use case, and I was able to get a lot more work done faster. So these AIs answer in a really strange way. They'll answer often as if it's 100% fact, but it's based off of training data, and it may or may not be true. So you might be like, hey, what's 9 plus 10? And it says 21. You have no idea how it got that answer. So there's a few things you can do to help prevent this and make sure you get the best answers from an AI tool. Now this gets into the realm of prompt engineering, which is something we're going to discuss in much detail, but you don't need to be an engineer to understand the way you ask the question determines the way they answer the question. So there's a few things you can do in the question to get a better response. So one of the easiest ways to do that is to adjust your account settings to say what you want from the answers. But I'll give you an example of a prompt that might give you a better response. Now this one is quite long. I don't think you need to be this in depth for every single question, but you can give as much information up front and then you can tell it to basically adhere to that for the rest of the conversation. So you can go back and forth, iterate on ideas, all with that context in mind. So here's an example prompt, something I would ask. You are a viral content strategist helping me brainstorm short form video ideas. I create content on software engineering or some niche. I want fresh, scroll stopping video concepts that are simple to film, under 60 seconds, and hook the viewer in the first 3 seconds. For each idea, provide a compelling hook, the core message or trick, and why it's likely to perform well based on platform trends. Skip generic advice, give high performing formats only. Now you might be thinking like, how did I think to write that? Well, funny enough, I just asked ChatGPT what kind of prompt I would want, something that's very specific, and then it gave me an example prompt that I could use for this video. So that prompt was actually AI generated. That's why it was pretty wordy. I probably would have been a little bit more specific, like, hey, I need 60-second videos, hook in the first 3 seconds, no garbage general advice, be very specific, and make it a very clear outcome that the person watching gets from that content. But here are a few points related to prompt engineering, why this is a good prompt. It has role assignment, and this is basically where you tell the AI who the AI is, so then it frames all the material as that person. In this case, I said it was a viral content strategist that helped brainstorm ideas. You could be more specific or adjust that to change the approach of the content. So for example, I might say, you are a 5th grader, and that might make the content a much simpler level. Or I might say, hey, you're a computer scientist. Can you explain this in such a way that you would for a computer science degree? That's going to adjust the entire output. Next up was a clear output format. I need a hook and a concept and why it works. It has hard constraints under 60 seconds and avoids garbage by skipping generic advice. So we'll circle back to the idea of prompt engineering later. This is important just for day-to-day interaction with LLMs, but also when you integrate with LLMs in your apps. So the next tool I wanted to talk about is Copilot. This is not an LLM. However, it's an AI tool that utilizes an LLM. So Copilot will be integrated in your editor, so Visual Studio Code, and it can do interactive conversation, automatic code suggestion and completion, and most recently they announced their agent mode, which I think is preview for the people who pay $200 a month or whatever it is. So we'll talk about agents too, but basically Copilot is a tool that uses AI. So we're not working with an LLM directly, we're working with a tool that uses LLMs, but this tool has more context and can take the responses from the LLMs to generate code for you. Now this is a tool from GitHub and Microsoft, and as a result, it has pretty strong integration with GitHub. So one of the things you can do is when you're working in code, and let's say you have a main branch, and then let's say you have some other branches for dev, you can make a branch rule so anytime you make a change that gets merged into main, it has to first go through an AI code review. So Copilot can scan the PR and actually call out any potential issues, reducing the risk of merging something bad into main. That's something that would take 2 seconds, maybe 3 to enable, and you get continual benefit making a product better. It's not even using it as a crutch, it's just helping enforce quality code in production. So how is Copilot different than agents, and what does it mean when Copilot has an agent mode? Well, agents will think of a bigger task and work through it end to end so they complete the full thing. So you can give it an idea, it'll create files, it'll piece things together and work towards building a complete product. This is different than just code suggestions and autocomplete to write as you go. So they call that their pair programming, but an agent is basically assigned a task and it'll continue to work on that task until it runs into issues or achieves the result at hand. So agents are really cool and is something I would really recommend you learn. We're going to talk about them and show how to use them in this course. Now, when you watch this material can be important. A lot of these concepts are going to stay the same, but the AI tools are evolving fast. So what's in preview now might be standard in a year. Or I might be using a version of ChatGPT that uses a certain number of parameters, and you're using a much newer version with way more parameters. Regardless of what versions of stuff you're using, a lot of these AI principles are going to be exactly the same. So even if you're on a slightly different version of these tools, don't let that influence you to not go through this material, because I'm going to teach you the core concepts that makes you better and more useful regardless of what version of these softwares you use. So here's an example. I want to teach you the kinds of things an interviewer might ask in an AI dedicated interview. And this is becoming much more common even for regular software engineers. They may have a dedicated AI interview in the full interview rounds. So now not only do you have to know DSA, system design, behavioral interviews, but also AI topics. So I'll give you a high-level overview of that question right now, so you know what kind of topics you should look out for in these upcoming lessons and as you continue to learn AI topics. So a question might be, how would you write a good prompt? Well, we already talked about the essentials of that in this lesson, but another great one would be to talk about the idea of hallucinations, which is when an AI spews garbage as if it's fact or brings previous information that it shouldn't be using, basically giving a bad output. So you could make a better prompt by having the AI explain how it got to its conclusion step by step, making the progression more auditable. This can be really important for healthcare or military applications where you need a justification for any result or decision. You can ask the AI to make its conclusion more reproducible. We basically want something to be deterministic. Given the same exact scenario again, would we get the same output? This is a concept you might be familiar with if you have a computer science background or have built APIs. Another question is the topic of MCP. This is something you should be familiar with. We're going to cover that in this course. MCP describes how different tools and apps can interact with LLMs. So this is kind of a standard. So this was introduced by Anthropic, and they describe it as USB-C for AI. So making the data transfer between apps and LLMs all standard so that we can plug and play different components. So for example, you might have an LLM that wants to integrate with your GitHub repositories. So using MCP, we can enhance that LLM to do additional things for us instead of just giving us text back. So this is how we go from text back and forth to now starting to use AI to do more complex tasks. You should be familiar with agents, how they're different from just a standard LLM or a tool like Copilot. Additionally, you should be familiar with the new way of using apps. So oftentimes, users will use LLMs, and these LLMs will interact with apps out on the internet or do searches and things of this nature. So we no longer have to just worry about search engine optimization. We have to worry about large language model optimization, something you might hear as LLMO. Consider this to be like SEO 2.0. If our software we write, even if it's not some AI-centric app, can be utilized by LLMs or at least talked about by LLMs properly, that's going to be a huge plus for search engine optimization effectively. So that's a huge topic we could get into. And lastly, you should be familiar with different libraries that will be used for AI development. Common one being LangChain. So the current description of LangChain on their website, tools for every step of the agent development lifecycle, built to unlock powerful AI in production. So this is basically a tool set to allow you to build agents and more complex AI apps. So I'm not saying you have to learn this one specifically, but you should be familiar with the AI app building ecosystem and the different softwares that are out there. So spending 20% of your time to first learn the landscape can go a long way. So that way you're not like an expert in prompt engineering, but you haven't even heard of LangChain. This is a very extensive video, and we really just touched a bunch of different topics without going in a ton of depth. Now we're going to go into some of the different AI tools, learn how to use them at a deeper level so you can more effectively utilize AI as a software engineer. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks everybody here on YouTube for watching this video, making it through to the end. If you've enjoyed this content and you want more content like this, then of course subscribe. We're going to be releasing material here on YouTube, but if you want a more comprehensive curriculum, then I would check the link down in the description for access to this course. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.